been brought to my attention that I've somehow reached the coveted status of 1,000 subscribers. To all of you who have made this possible, I want to give you a big thank you. And I also want to dedicate this video to you. So, every 100 subscriber milestone, I like to do something a little different. And well, I feel like this channel really took off when I really started to focus on a passion of mine, video games. And so I figured I would go over some of the rarer and some of the weirder aspects that I have in my collection. So I'm going to go in reverse chronological order. I'm going to start with my most recent acquisition, Digimon Survive. I really don't know what the story is with this one, as I have yet to see it be sold anywhere, really. I was really lucky because after I was told this game came out, I started going to every single local game store I could find to look for it. I found no luck, so I caved and decided to go to GameStop. And there I found out that the game was only available for pre-orders. But just my luck, there was one customer who had let this pre-order sit for about a month at this point. And the clerk there is like, well, you're here now, you're going to buy it, go ahead and take it. And I did. I did make a few episodes based on this, but I'm not going to lie, I'm not too big a fan of the whole visual novel thing, but I do love the battle mechanics of this game. And as you can probably tell from just my logo, I am a huge Digimon fan, and that was the main reason that I picked this up. So I'm not sure if it's necessarily a rare title or if it only just stayed on the shelves for a very short time, but yeah, I have yet to see this game for sale anywhere. Of course, I don't look online. I'm a very old-fashioned person. I like to stick in the realm of the physical. Except for in this case, which I'm in the internet. And the next up, well, this isn't necessarily a rare game by any stretch of the imagination, but I wager most people would think this was a Switch game only. It was not. It was first on the Wii U as one of the last titles before the system was discontinued. The main reason I bring this up is I do remember that when it came to Twilight Princess, which, by the way, that's where this hat says it is from, that there are two versions released. There was the Twilight Princess on the Wii, which is very common, and the GameCube version, which is pretty hard to find. And I wonder if in years to come that'll be the same for the Wii U version. And then these next two I have, they're not necessarily rare, but oh my gosh, if these games ever broke, I do not want to pony up at least $100 a piece to replace them. Smash Bros. Melee and Mario Kart Double Dash. I remember it very well the day I picked these up. I was at about 6th grade. This was a bit of a cherry on top to a rather dubious Sunday, shall we say. I had my appendix taken out as it was pretty close to if it didn't had burst already. Not sure if that's proper English, but I hope you get what I mean. While I was slowly building up my recovery, I just remember walking into a local Target and, well, the Wii just came out, so they were really starting to get rid of their GameCube merchandise, so I was able to pick up both of these for like $15 at the time. And there was a local retro game store that I would used to go to all the time. For a while, nobody knew what to get me, so they just gave me gift cards to this game store. And I would go there all the time to see what new stuff there was, as well as potentially see how rare some of the games I had was. And it just amazed me the day I walked in and I saw Super Smash Bros. Melee for triple digits. Then again, everybody claims that this one's the most balanced. I don't know. I don't play competitively. I need items. And if there's no items, I don't want to play. And then we move on to the previous generation. Yeah, I have Perfect Dark in the box. Now, it may look like it's shrink wrap, but I did open it because obviously I've played this game a lot. This one isn't necessarily rare by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, last I checked, you could probably pick up a boxed copy of Perfect Dark for like 40 bucks, which is really cheap, all things considering, for this sort of thing. So, got the game, which I put in a plastic bag. Usually I just have it out because I play it a lot of the times. And I just figured I would show some of the other things. So, a subscription to Nintendo Power. That's always the thing I just find so weird, is whenever they would draw Joanna like this, she has red short hair, but yet in the game, to me it always came off as brown. You got your customer handbooklet, it's just like, ooh, how to handle your game. And the instruction manual. It's crazy to think instruction manuals don't even exist these days. And it's still kind of amazed to me that they actually had to show how to hold the controller. That seems to be the biggest problem I run into whenever I'm just like, hey, you want to play some Perfect Dark, GoldenEye? Well, first of all, the people I play it with are intimidated because they know I've been playing it for years. But they're also intimidated when they look at the three-prong controller and they're just like, how are you supposed to work this? Well, that's one of the issues I have, is I've had this game, I've had the system for such a long time now that it's just kind of become second nature. Oh, you know, you got kind of like a little dossier on the characters. And then like your important information and whatnot. I just love the idea that there's like a little warranty here in the back. It's like, yes, that should be guaranteed for at least a year. This game is 24 years old. And with a little bit of luck, it should be getting a sequel within another year. And obviously the rarest game in my N64 library, Conker's Bad Fur Day. The cartridge alone is rather expensive, but like I said, built up all kinds of credit at a local retro game store, so I was able to get this for like 64 bucks, even though it was retailed at 99 plus tax. Just for the cartridge, I could only imagine how much this game would go for if it had the box and the instruction manual. And I can definitely say only Rare could have made a game for Nintendo like that at the time. This next one is not necessarily a Rare game by any stretch of the imagination, but I just found it to be a very interesting case. It is kind of annoying that the instruction manual is so destroyed, but finding it all secondhand at a garage sale, I think it's pretty well and good. And there's the cartridge. At least on the bright side, though, the information I need is still intact. I mean, you're still able to read the bios of all the characters. Unfortunately, you might be a little confused on the controls. I'm trying to think. There was one page that actually showed you how many points you needed to progress to each little area. And I like how it actually says in the manual what all the characters can do. Obviously, Slippy is the one that can analyze the enemy shields, tell you what the health is. Peppy gives you some advice, and Falco, let's see. With Falco, you're more likely to travel through routes with a higher difficulty level. Aha, there's the information I needed. How many points you needed to get to each level. And even though it's chopped up in that area, the information you need is somehow still there. There's this odd message in the notes. If anybody's a big Star Fox 64 fan, does that mean anything to you? After that, we move on to Super Nintendo. But I figure just as a bit of a footnote, I do have a Sega Genesis. It's just not something that's very populated like the Nintendo stuff I have. But the only thing I have that could be a little on the rare side is the original Streets of Rage. Fantastic game. And I think I even recorded an episode of it at one time. It's kind of funny that I ended up choosing the girl before I even knew who I was at that point. And I have these rather unique controllers. Usually with these rip-off controllers, they don't usually have a reputation of being high quality, but these I think are great. Not only do you have the extra buttons, but you even have the ability to turbo all of them. And they also have different selections. And for me, I'd say that's a lot of bang for the buck. In fact, I'm trying to remember how I even got the Genesis. I think a friend might have given it to me. I seem to have a reputation of being the one person that people give stuff to because they'd know I'd give it a good home. Same thing with board games as well. Now on to the Super Nintendo, as I mentioned. The rarest game in my collection. Earthbound. I don't know who Brandy is. All I know is she's a fine girl. What a good wife she would be. But her life, her love, and her lady is the sea. Now that is the thing. Some people would say, well, why don't you try to remove that brandy? A, it might destroy the cartridge, and B, I do like the idea that it's unique. This is my version. There's no other version of Earthbound that says brandy on it. There could be, but for now, there may be many like it. This is mine. And then we have this obscure SNES game called Out of This World. The main reason I wanted to show this one off is this has such an oddly unique case to it. I wonder if maybe this was meant to be a renter's copy at one point. Yeah, it even shows how much it would have originally gone for, about 60 bucks. So we open it up. Just the receipt and the game itself. I'm sure the manual should have been in here at one point as well, but it wasn't. When did I get this? All the way back in 2017. These next few Super Nintendo games I'm going to show you are not necessarily rare, but I wanted to show them off, as well as this very interesting carrying case that I have for them. Just simply take the lid off, and there are my Super Nintendo games, as well as a few of my GameCube games. Probably the most famous, Pokemon Blue. Yes, I'm a Digimon fan, but even I can acknowledge that Pokemon did have some good video games. I just think the Digimon anime is far superior. Fight me. Now to some of the other obscure ones I have. James Bond on Game Boy. This is a really unique entry, as it kind of comes off more as like a Legend of Zelda type game. In fact, while you have guns, I found it easier to just use the sword, but along the way you're like solving puzzles, but it's in the James Bond universe. In my opinion, it's a bit of an underrated title. While I do like the first-person shooters, I did like the puzzle-solving aspect of this one. Link's Awakening. This one has some bittersweet memories. This was the last game I bought from that famous retro video game store before it went under. I've never completed it, and a part of me doesn't want to. I feel like in doing so, it would officially mean that that game store is dead. But even on top of that, I found this to be a really difficult Zelda game. All the other ones I was able to figure out on my own, including even a very famous homebrew. What was it called? Which I actually showed you myself doing a blind playthrough of that. I don't think I looked up a walkthrough. I hope I didn't. Let's see, what other Game Boy titles do I have in here? Ah, yes. The original Kirby. And you gotta love how he's painted white. Because I guess there was a famous story about the original creator, as well as Shigeru Miyamoto, arguing what color he should be. Shigeru wanted yellow, while the original creator, I can't remember his name at the moment, wanted pink. However, he would later go on to make the Super Smash Bros. Franchise, and a lot of people think that he showed favoritism to Kirby in the original game. Now on to probably the most interesting thing I could think of for a video game. I want to make sure I'm saying the name right. Gargoyle's Quest. This is another famous story because the character is known as the Red Blaze, even though he's green. This is the weirdest premise I could think of for a game. So in Ghosts and Goblins, there is this red gargoyle that you have to fight in one of the levels. Capcom decided to make a whole trilogy of games based off this guy. I used to have the NES version as well, but it was one of those games where after I beat it, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I've seen everything I want to see. Well, the Game Boy version, I don't know. It felt like there was more I still wanted to see in this one. I almost forgot to mention, I'm a Battletoads fan, and I remember my brother-in-law found this. It's a poster of Battletoads art. You got Rash, you got Zitz, you got Pimple, all doing their famous boogie boards across the galaxy. And yeah, I have 2 Battletoads games here. So, we got Battletoads and Double Dragon, which got a lot of different ports. There was also a version on the NES, which I will show you later. There was a version on Game Boy, and there was also a version on Genesis. If you were to ask if I were to choose between this one and the Genesis version, I would select the Genesis version. While this one, the graphics are a little better and the music clarity is a fair bit, well, clearer, I liked that the Genesis version had more sound effects. This one feels very empty by comparison. And of course, the other Battletoads game I have, the sort of spiritual successor to the original Battletoads on the NES, Battletoads and Battlemaniacs. Probably one of the features I still find amazing about this game. So it gets to the point where the antagonist, the Dark Queen, is starting to get away. Well, the Battletoads have a spaceship that they were able to pursue her with. Now you get 2 different endings as to what you do. The first ending, you do nothing, the Queen escapes, and you kind of get the bad ending. However, if you are able to target the Queen's ship and shoot her down, then you get the good ending in which you defeat the Dark Queen. Which, may I just say one other thing about the Dark Queen? A lot of people talking about the woman from Resident Evil Village as being the best Dami Mommy. Look at the Dark Queen. Don't tell me you don't want her to sit on you. You also got Turtles in Time, which I hear is a bit of a rare one. Unfortunately, my copy is a little flaky, so there's been a few times I've played it and it would just kind of crash for no reason. But hey, when I'm able to get it to work, it's a lot of fun. This one, I just wanted to show off because it has a bit of a fun story. I picked this up at a garage sale for 75 cents. Probably like 10 years ago at this point. And yeah, that is some money well spent. Of course, you can't forget the original Donkey Kong Country, Contra 3, which, yeah, I have the trilogy. I've got Contra, Super C, and I've got Contra 3. One of these days I would love to get a hold of Contra Force. While it's not an official Contra game, there are some interesting gameplay elements that I would love to try out. Super Metroid. This is definitely one of those games where I got it for what I thought was a bit of a high price, but it's a game that, as I look up what the price is more and more, I realized that I got a pretty sweet deal on it. And yeah, I'm not necessarily the biggest Metroid fan, but Metroid 3, this I like to play. The first one, it needed like more save points or at least some way to be able to fill up your health a lot easier. The second game, a lot like Link's Awakening, I just found really hard to navigate. This game, I don't know. It's fun. I like it. Of course, Mario Kart, which I picked up at a thrift store for $4. Once again, some money well spent. On to probably the system I have the most odd and unique things to mention. The Nintendo Entertainment System, or as a lot of people call it, the NES. Let's open up and see what treasures lie inside. Well, I suppose I'll just kind of go one at a time then. The original Metal Gear for NES. What a lot of people may not know is that it originally came with a map. Unfortunately, my copy had been destroyed by an unusually humid summer, but at least the important information is still around. Perhaps this is something I could take to a restorer to take care of it, but the expense it would take to probably restore this would probably be worth more than this map would. But hey, at least there's a PDF of it online, and you know, you even get the boss readout. Yeah, that's kind of a tragedy for the ages, but, well, I mean, I still have it, so I guess that's something. Hearing that if it was in a good enough shape, that would have eventually went for $80. Who would have thought that such a thing would be so rare? As I mentioned, the original Contra. This is one of those games that I definitely have kicked myself over a few times. So I originally got this with a bundle of 20 other NES games. This was like back in like 2005, maybe 4. 20 games for $20, and this was one of the games. Well, unfortunately, I didn't think it was that good of a game, so I sold it. And then I was convinced by a little known YouTube reviewer called the Irate Gamer to buy it back. Of course, by then it wasn't worth $1 anymore, it was worth $20. But I'm happy I did get it back. But the interesting thing is, my cousin had the game, and he gave me the instruction manual. Yeah, figure I'll just kind of go through it real quickly. And if nothing else, it's just kind of fun to actually see names to these characters. And let's see, we got the button layout. And what exactly all of these power-ups are supposed to do, combined with a general idea of the layout of each level. I love the idea that there's like a little high score at the bottom. Yeah, I guess there was still a bit of a holdover from Atari where it was more about getting the high score than it was about beating the game. However, if it's like other Konami games like, say, Castlevania, you could probably just press the start button and then go for the challenge mode, which is the same game, but just more enemies. The game that is as common as dirt in the NES library. This is basically the combat of the NES. In fact, I remember there was a joke where one reviewer was just like, yeah, I'm trying to get another 30 of these so I can make a table out of them. But the manual is not so common. Now, I figure I might as well confirm a bit of a rumor. So, it's always been stated that the people of the Mushroom Kingdom were attuned to bricks, And yes, in becoming Super Mario, you can smash those bricks. Personally, I never really saw that as Mario killing the people of the Mushroom Kingdom, but just using a little bit of his power to free them, as it was only really Princess Toadstool that was able to free them completely. I do like the idea that the graphics were so advanced that they could just take a picture of them here, as opposed to later entries where they would just try to do some fun artwork to make it look better than, well, I guess it really was. And I do love the idea that there's like a top secret section. Yeah, and then after that it goes to Duck Hunt. And yeah, somehow the TVs I have are older than this. And then we have Mega Man 2. The main reason I bring this up is this is a game I also have the manual for. Trying to think if there's anything interesting. Oh yeah, this is a Captain Commando series. There was a few of them. I think Ghost and Goblins was one of them. You gotta love the character of these hand-drawn power-ups. And I find it weird that these look exactly like the first Mega Man rather than the second. I wonder if maybe something got mixed up. There's something I like about these drawings. It almost feels like a fan kind of wrote them in, well, drew them in rather than an artist. Because, see, this is what a professional artist would draw the characters like. And I like the idea that they kind of start you off on your way by saying how to defeat Airman. So I guess that is where you were meant to start the game. And yeah, once again, you see how professional this is. I always love that. 90-day limited warranty. I think that's expired. As I mentioned, huge Battletoads fan. Battletoads and Double Dragon on the NES. This is definitely one of those games where I play it and the graphics just immediately blow me away each time. It was definitely a much later entry in the NES library, but the graphics in this just make my face melt. And of course, how could I forget the original Battletoads in a nice little blue case. So you can actually see what it looks like. I love the colors on this artwork. This would definitely be one of those games I would love to get a box set for, not only to see how the instruction manual panned out, but also, just to have it. It's something I like, and it's something I want to show my like for. Family Feud Family Edition. Which, knowing some of the answers, it's hard to say how much of the family would be able to know most of this. Also got the instruction manual for it. That was really the main reason I wanted to show it off. This one was also kind of ravaged by an unusually humid summer, but thankfully none of the pages adhesed. This is definitely another one of those games I wanted to show off, as I heard it was a bit on the rarer side. TMNT 3, the Manhattan Project, which is probably the best Turtles game on the NES. I know there's people that have a fond spot for the first, people that are nostalgic for the second, which was the arcade game, which I don't know if it's a Mandela effect, but I could have sworn that the second game you could have up to 4 players, but unfortunately no such luck. All the games, well, the first one was only single player, the second was 2-player, and this one is only 2-player. It's still a lot of fun. Another rarer game, Bomberman 2. And yes, like I said, this was part of my original collection of the 20 that I first purchased. North and South. This game itself, I hear, is pretty rare and expensive. And it's a real shame because it is a great game. And one that apparently got a remaster not too long ago, so basically it's the United States Civil War. Each of you is a commander trying to claim victory on the battlefield. And I love the idea that if the Confederacy wins, the end credits are just like, well, you clearly didn't study history in school. And of course, the game that is so good it had to be encrusted in gold. The Legend of Zelda. The first one, anyway. Now, not only do I have the manual for this, which the main reason I want to show this off is because I love the artwork. If there was ever a Legend of Zelda animated series, well, wait, there was. If there was one that took the subject matter more seriously, this is how I would love it to look. Kind of have that, like, early 80s anime look. In fact, that's the thing I wonder is, did they just paint these? Or were these actually, like, animation cells of a show that never existed? Be a very interesting thing. Ah, yes. I do like the artwork even on this one a little bit. There's something charming, almost kind of like the Mega Man 2 artwork, how it looked a bit more juvenile, but this one looks a bit more professionally juvenile, if that makes any sense. Now, the other thing I wanted to show off was, yeah, here we go. So we got the graphics side by side next to the fancy artwork. It's kind of what I was trying to allude to earlier, that sometimes they would just draw the artwork to make things look fancier than they really were in the game. So here are the enemies again. Must be a little more towards the end. Yeah, I do like the idea that it shows you what each map is generally supposed to look like, and a lot of people may take offense to this one, but may I just tell you right now that this is not a Nazi symbol, this is a symbol that also exists in Buddhism. A swastika is slightly turned onto the side. I do remember that symbol also being a bit controversial in one of the Pokemon cards as well. Unfortunately, it's a misunderstood symbol that's been corrupted by a very disturbed man that almost took over the world. I like how there's actually a little section of the map there. Ah yes, I'm getting it mixed up with my other thing. The map of The Legend of Zelda. That folds like any other road map. And along the way, kind of drew in what needed to be shown. And the thing I like is they show you how in the world you can draw maps of the dungeons. Now the main reason I bring this up, let me just fold this up real quickly, is that when I was playing through the game, for both the first quest and the second quest, I did the same thing myself. I kind of thought since the castles of the second quest look a lot like letters, you're supposed to do it in the order that spelled Zelda, but no, that wasn't so much the case. And I never understood why Death Mountain looked a bit more like a bunny. There's something that modern gamers probably don't even do these days. And I remember even making a photocopy to kind of show where you're supposed to go for the second quest. Now for all the games that I still have boxes for, let me see if I can find a way to be able to set this down in such a way that they don't end up crushing each other. Well, first things first, this one is more just kind of a bonus, the NES cleaning kit. Personally, I found it easier to go with rubbing alcohol or peroxide, and then I would just kind of put that both in the cartridge and in the game itself. I mean, well, I guess that's both the cartridge, but I mean the system itself. Yeah, I don't even know if this thing works, and odds are I probably need some sort of specific fluid for it to work, and I do not have it in this box. But I figured that was just an interesting thing to show off. I would wager in my collection this is probably the most sought after right here. Super Mario Bros. 3 fantastic game, and finding it in the box is kind of a rare thing. Although I do want to mention that the top's completely ripped off, and it is a little ripped up on the back, but yeah, I'm not. I found out long ago that I'm not a collector. And on top of that, I think there's more demand that I guess at one point the Bros was over here at one point, and I guess that's a little rarer. I don't know. All the copies I have, the Bros is over here. So we got the game itself and the instruction manual. Let's see. This is just kind of peruse. I love the artwork on Bowser's Children. Yeah, just say I love the artwork of these instruction manuals. But even more impressive in my opinion is the strategy guide. This is a work of art I would love to frame in my house, but I do not have the heart to rip this cover out. Now I have this set to a particular page because it has a very interesting trick. There is a way to turn Hammer Bros into coin ships. I remember discovering it by accident a few times, but knowing that there was a way you could actually have it happen all the time, wonderful. Trying to think if there were any other pieces of artwork I wanted to show off. I'm just laughing at the receipt I have here. It's for two obscure NES titles, one called Zexes and the other called Journey to Silius. I wanted to show off the artwork here as well. Probably one of the first strategy guides, and it's just crazy how jam-packed this game is. Zelda 2. Now, those of you that are die-hard fans would probably know that this is actually the re-release. And the re-release came in the standard gray cartridge. However, because I thought it was more aesthetically pleasing, I put the gold cartridge in there. And look, I even have the instruction manual as well. So let's see. Once again, this artwork. I wish there could have been an animated series with this artwork. But even more interesting is when you read the manual, you really kind of get that there is quite an in-depth story here, more than just you would find in that little mistranslated opening screen. Yeah, now look at Blink there. I do wonder what in the world the story was behind the art that was commissioned for these manuals. Like, were there any credits? Does anybody know who did them? And I don't know if there was ever a map to the second game, but if there was, I unfortunately don't have it. Star Tropics. A bit of an obscure classic, but here is probably the most unique feature of this game. So, I'm not sure if it comes to any surprise, but there is this letter that is given along with the manual. Kind of something to kind of immerse you more in the game. You play a little boy named Mikey who is traveling to a tropical island in order to see your uncle, Dr. Jones. And yes, that is obviously an Indiana Jones reference. So that is the letter, and you'll see that there is space here on the bottom. Well, if you hold it up into the light just right, let me see if I can show you real quick. You can actually see that there's writing in there. Essentially how it's supposed to work is that you drench the thing in water, and that's supposed to bring the message out. But if you have a really sunny day and you put this in front of a window, you can read it that way. Not a feature that you would find in modern games by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I love the idea that even on the back of the instruction manual it says, "Note, this letter is very important. Please hold all the way through to the end." And one of the other things I wanted to show about the instruction manual as well. Let me see if I can find it. It's a little closer to the end. Where to spot the Southern Cross. There was actually one time I found myself in the southern half of the hemisphere, and I actually used this to figure out where the Southern Cross was. And I can very much agree. It is a beautiful constellation. I love how it says to keep the letter to the end, but whoever had this manual in the box didn't. I don't know where I got the letter, actually. I just picked that up later from somewhere. Or maybe the letter came with the box, because I do remember getting the game with the manual. It's a very interesting thing. And if you ever get the chance, it's a really good game. Very much in the style of Legend of Zelda. But it's set in modern times and meant for an American audience. There's a lot of different ways to pronounce this, but this is one of the things. I remember I was asking a friend of mine who knows Chinese, Japanese, and a little bit of Korean. And in translating these characters, he told me that it would be Gaiden, which I believe either translates to dragon or the ultimate challenge, which I feel like both fit this game perfectly. Because after all, I think the sword is known as the Dragon Sword. So I just kind of pop this out real quick. There's something about the elegant simplicity of the back here that I like. I'm trying to think if there's anything interesting to show in the manual. Kind of show you how in the world the cutscenes worked. And I do like the idea that they say, hey, if you've seen these cutscenes before, you could just press the start button and go on to the rest of the level. But again, there's just something about this artwork that's just not something you see very often these days. Of course, well, I mean, you don't really see instruction manuals these days. You can just kind of download that stuff online. That's when I remember showing off on my alternate YouTube channel, actually, the box of the Little Mermaid. I still think this is a rather odd scene for them to take a picture of. I mean, I feel like there might have been some action shots you might have been able to pick instead, but it's not my place to choose. But yeah, I know that sleeve is in there. Come on. There's the sleeve. I always like to keep it with the manual. Even the manual has that picture on it. And let's see. I do love the idea that there's a little bit of a thank you note for picking this game. That's also something I feel like is lost in gaming. Kind of this idea that, like, hey, the customer bought your game. It's like, wow, thank you. Thank you very much. These days, it's more like, look, we're out to make money, okay? Why don't you just buy it, or if you don't, we'll find some other sucker that will. In fact, here's a fun thing for you. Did you know that there was actually a Little Mermaid animated TV series? Not sure if it lasted very long, but from the episode or two I've seen, it's fantastic. I put it up there with the Aladdin animated series. Totally rad. I have yet to even play this game, in all honesty. I hear it's pretty good, but yeah, this was one of those acquisitions I got where somebody told me that this game needed a good home, and I promised it to them. Doesn't look like I have the manual to this one. Yeah, well, like I said, good home. And that's definitely the same for these next two I'm going to show you. So, Danny Sullivan's Indie Heat, which is kind of the spiritual successor to Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road. I do remember this game being such a meme for a long time, where people said that it seemed like every time you said Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road, the price of the game would go up at least $3. I don't know if that's still the case now, but yeah, Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road. it is part of my collection, and now it is getting more and more valuable. But we're talking about Danny Sullivan's Indie Heat. Very similar game, in the idea that you can see the whole track on the screen itself. Seem to be having a hard time getting this one out. Oh, that's strange. I have the instruction manual to Dr. Mario in there. Love their artwork. One of these days I should probably get Dr. Mario, you know, complete the collection. Seriously, how'd that even get in there? But anyway, Danny Sullivan's Indie Heat. NZ cartridge. Just kind of shows the screenshots, not really any crazy artwork I wanted to show you, but still an interesting thing. It's just not very often that you get games in the box or even with the instruction manual. Did I not have a sleeve for this? Well, I gotta fix that. And then the other one, NES Open Tournament. Mario Golf. Wow. Looks like there's a lot to this manual. I guess it kind of goes over all the different courses that are involved as well. Warning, do not use with front or rear projection TV. I wonder why that is. Oh look, we actually get to see artwork of Daisy. It's just not something you get to see very often. So there's a Luigi. I can kind of do a Luigi impression. And then you got some of these other different people. I do not know who these people are. But it is very interesting. I'd love to be able to see the artwork of these. Once again, dying art. Well, dead art, I guess. I mean, instruction manuals don't exist anymore, as I've said already. Come on. I know you're in there. There we go. NES Open. And it actually saves your score. The original Mega Man. And once again, there is somebody's name on the back of it. It's one of those things where it's like, could remove it, but once again, this is my copy. It's a little annoying that the cover's kind of coming off there, but yeah. Gotta love that artwork. At least it looks like a man, but it's not good. Right. Final Fantasy. This is a bit of an interesting one, as my cousin was giving me his collection, and what he gave me was the map of all the dungeons. And on the back are all the stats for all the pick-upable, equipable weapons that you can get in this game. He also gave me a map of the game world itself. I do remember seeing people frame this and like they hold it up in their collection in game stores and whatnot. I don't know how valuable this is, but I like to keep it in good shape. And on the back is the breakdown of all the monsters. Except for Chaos, he is left to be a bit of a mystery. This gave me the instruction manual, or the Explorer's Handbook. In fact, I remember before I even got the game, I read this thing back and forth just to make sure I could understand everything that was going on. Not necessarily any crazy artwork in here, but I do like the idea that they actually show off all the gameplay within it. It's fun when they take screenshots instead. Chock full of information. And even more so than that, strategy guide. The only thing I didn't have was the game, so I obviously had to order it, and it was like $10 at the time. There was one thing I wanted to show about the strategy guide that I absolutely loved. So with all this information, I went crazy. This is how I beat the game. And I love the idea that, like, for the very last area, it kind of gives you the bare bones on how you can defeat chaos, but it still very much leaves them to be a mystery. Kind of like, you made it this far, you got this, young adventurer. Once again, gotta love that artwork. So yeah, I had everything else, I had to do that. Now this was a bit of an interesting one. It's when the game originally came out, it was in the USSR. And because of communism, the original creator was not allowed to own it as it belonged to the state. As such, this game fell under fair use, and there was a lot of back and forth as to who owned the rights to it, Tengen or Nintendo. Eventually, Nintendo won the lawsuit, which makes this particular copy of the game a little on the rarer side. I'm not sure how rare, but I believe there was a cease and desist order at one point, so what was made during those few years was obviously a lot less than what Nintendo kept pumping out for a long time. And if you were to ask me which one I think is the superior version, I definitely say this one. Not only do I love Brandinsky, but the idea that this one has a two-player option. You got a versus, and you also have a cooperative. Yeah, some modern fans of Tetris will probably be a little annoyed that the original Tetris theme that everybody knows and loves is not in here, but there are just so many other good tunes in here. You got Brandinsky, you got Karinka, and I forget what the name of the other two are. But Brandinsky was always my favorite. And, well, there is one last thing I want to discuss. I should have mentioned this in the N64 catalog, but, well, I accidentally forgot to get it out. But yeah, as a lot of people would know, I am a huge GoldenEye fan. And this is one of those great mysteries. I am very curious to see how in the world they tried to explain how to do the control. And I love the idea that there's even maps of the multiplayer areas. Yeah, this is intense. You gotta love it. I can only imagine how crazy this would get if this was involved with Goldfinger 64 or with Spy Who Loved Me 64. There'd be a lot to this. So here's the control. I'm wondering where it tells you where to stand when it comes to keeping Natalia safe. Protecting Natalia in the computer room is the most dangerous objective in the mission. Pick up the body armor on the 3rd floor before you lead Natalia to the terminal. Stand in the front of the room and do your best to cover all 4 entrances as the Yanis troops start to charge. Some guards will target you to throw off your aim, while others will focus only on Natalia. Out. You can't pick your targets. Eliminate everyone before he can pull off a shot. That's interesting. I guess I just must have figured that out on my own. I remember that was a bit of a trick, is I believe that there are 2 guards. There's ones wearing the black hats and the ones wearing no hats. The ones wearing the black hats will target Natalia. No, wait, will target you specifically. But the ones not wearing the hats will target only Natalia. So that's interesting. Stand in the front of the room. That's the way I used to do it, is I would just kind of stand right behind Natalia and then try to cover all 4 corners that way. But if you actually go up the stairs to like about here, that I think is a much better vantage point, because all the guards will come down the stairway here, and then you could just take them all out before they even get there. Of course, you can't move very far, otherwise Natalia will complain. So yes, that is a glimpse at my collection. If there is interest, perhaps I will do a part 2 where I go over some of the more interesting accessories, as well as perhaps some of the weirdest controllers that you have ever seen. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this 1,000 subscriber special. It was you that made it possible, and I am very grateful for that. Until next time, keep having fun.